Good evening. Welcome to This Week in Turkey. In a major policy departure, U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Wednesday that all U.S. troops will withdraw from Syria.
Earlier in the day, Trump declared victory over the Islamic State, saying its defeat was the sole reason for the U.S.'s presence in the country under his administration. "It's time for our troops to come back home," Trump said in a pre-recorded video message posted on Twitter. "Our boys, our young women, our men, they're all coming back, and they're coming back now." Both the Pentagon and the White House statement said the U.S. has started returning United States troops home as we transition to the next phase of this campaign. The Pentagon said it would not provide further details of what that next phase is for force protection and operational security reasons. Trump's announcement had come as a shock to many after several top administration officials, including National Security Advisor John Bolton, insisted the U.S. would not be removing its forces until Iran exited Syria. The White House had earlier stressed that recent military victories against ISIS do not signal the end of the global coalition or its campaign.
The Pentagon said on Tuesday that the U.S. State Department approved a possible $3.5 billion sale of Patriot air and missile defense systems to Turkey.
According to the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, the deal between Turkey and the U.S. includes radar sets, engagement control stations, launching stations, communications equipment, tools and test equipment, range and test programs, and support equipment. With the deal, the State Department approved the sale of 80 Patriot guidance-enhanced missiles, 60 missile segment enhancement missiles, and associated equipment. Lawmakers have 15 days to review the proposed sale under streamlined procedures the State Department has in place for NATO allies. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency officials stated that the proposed sale will increase the defensive capabilities of Turkey's military to guard against hostile aggression and shield NATO allies who might train and operate within Turkey's borders. Turkey should have no difficulty absorbing this system into its armed forces. Over the last year, the purchase of the Patriot air and missile defense system has been a source of tension between Turkey and the U.S. Speaking to reporters in Washington, D.C. last month, Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu said his country had wanted to buy Patriot missiles but was never able to get a commitment from Washington. In 2017, Turkey signed a contract with Russia over a purchase of the S-400 air defense system. The installation of the system is expected to begin in October 2019. In a report in late November, the Pentagon warned that purchasing the S-400 system would have unavoidable negative consequences for U.S.-Turkey relations, as well as Turkey's role in NATO. Turkey has given no indication so far that it will be willing to give up the S-400, and officials there have said they want technology transfer as part of the Patriot deal.
Joining us tonight to talk about Donald Trump's decision to withdraw from Syria is Gönül Tol, Director of the Middle East Institute's Center for Turkish Studies. Good evening, Mrs. Tol. Welcome once again to This Week in Turkey.
Thanks for having me. Good evening.
So as we've just heard in the previous news videos, in quite an abrupt turn of events, U.S. President Donald Trump announced his decision to pull the U.S. troops out of Syria, and the entire national security establishment seems pretty shocked by this unexpected decision. We'll get to the details in a few minutes, but could you start by explaining for our viewers how the U.S. public feels about this decision?
Well, of course, I don't have any public opinion polls in my hands with regard to this specific decision, the latest decision, but judging by past U.S. public sentiment on U.S. military engagement overseas, I would argue that the U.S. public must support this decision. Remember President Obama, when he got elected partly on the promise of U.S. troops withdrawal from Iraq and Afghanistan. And people supported his pledge that the U.S. would invest in nation building at home. U.S. infrastructure is falling apart. People are worried about immigration and healthcare. So there is no appetite among Americans for expensive long-term military engagement, particularly in the Middle East. So I would assume that the U.S. That the U.S. public supports his decision. But the Congress is divided, and there is a lot of criticism coming out of his own party, President Trump's party, the Republican Party. Leading figures within the party, as well as the Democrats, are arguing that a quick withdrawal from Syria could lead to a regrouping of the Islamic State, and that could also force the U.S. to fight terrorism on the U.S. streets instead of the Middle East. So, despite the public support, there's a lot of criticism and skepticism on the Hill.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about how Erdogan responded to all of this today. In a speech he delivered today, President Erdogan suggested that Trump's decision to pull out of Syria was in fact induced by a phone conversation Erdogan had with Trump. And Erdogan further added that this conversation led Turkey to postpone its planned military operation in the east of the Euphrates River in northern Syria. What does this mean, and how do you evaluate all of this?
Well, I think President Trump has been wanting to do this for all along. And the reason why he stayed so long inside Syria is the pressure his advisors have been putting on him. But this was his decision, and it was clear from the get-go that this is what he wanted. And also, I think the timing is important here because he's facing serious domestic troubles. His former attorney, Michael Cohen, is speaking out after a judge sentenced him to 3 years in prison for financial crimes and campaign finance violations. And he told prosecutors that the president directed him to pay off 2 women who allegedly who claimed that they had affairs with Trump. So that's a huge problem for him because for the first time President Trump is linked to a federal crime. And second, his former aide, Michael Flynn, is also speaking to prosecutors. He's cooperating with the prosecutors. And that could reveal further information about President Trump's link to the Russians during his campaign. So these are serious matters for him, and there's a lot of pressure. The pressure on him is mounting. So he made this decision to pull out troops from Syria against this backdrop. So I don't think President Erdogan played a critical role here. This is what President Trump has wanted, and I think he thought that this was the right time. And also, given the U.S. support for such a decision, I think he made his decision based on his own domestic interests.
Some analysts claim that, some analysts propose that this withdrawal was a gift to Turkey. Would you agree with this kind of a view?
Well, Turkey certainly thinks that it is, but I think time will tell. I think the implications of U.S. decision to withdraw troops from Syria on Turkish interests will depend on Russians, what Russians will do. They have supported granting autonomy to the Syrian Kurds all along. And they've always wanted them to be at the table. They always argued that the Kurds were critical to a future political settlement. And I think the reason why Russians have tolerated and in some instances even encouraged Turkey to launch military incursions into Syria was the U.S. military presence in Syria, because Russia wanted to drive a wedge between the U.S. and Turkey, and also between the U.S. and the Kurds. So the U.S. military presence so far has strengthened Turkey's hand vis-à-vis the Russians. That might not be the case anymore after U.S. withdraws troops from Syria, because the Russians might decide, they might change course and they might change their resort vis-à-vis the Kurds. So I think it will all depend on what Russians will decide to do. And I argue that I think they will be less tolerant Turkey's military presence inside Syria. They could pursue a more tolerant and softer approach vis-a-vis the Kurds, which of course is a nightmare scenario for Turkey.
Mm-hmm. And U.S. Defense Secretary, ex-Defense Secretary James Mattis resigned following his disagreement with Trump's decision, as you know. How do you think James Mattis's resignation will impact relations with Turkey within the context of Syria?
Well, I think people do not matter in this administration because President Trump is a president who acts on impulses with little input from his advisors. And let's look at the example of James Jeffrey, for instance. Turkey hailed his appointment as welcome news because James Jeffrey is known to have his line is closer to Turkey's line in Syria. He's a very well-respected figure in Ankara, and yet he couldn't achieve anything. He couldn't secure a concession from the Turks, and he didn't really change the course of Syria policy. And let's remember that he's one of those who wanted a longer-term U.S. presence inside Syria. So I think the names, the people, they really do not matter. I think they are the reason why Turkey was having difficulties and disagreements with the U.S. in Syria was due to diverging interests. The two countries, they look at their definition of terrorism is different. Their interests are different. And each country was pursuing its own interests, and that was the heart of the matter. So it didn't matter whether James Jeffrey was appointed the Syria envoy, or it won't matter that Secretary Mattis is out of the picture. It all depends on how President Trump sees things. So I don't think that it will have serious implications. And also, I think if you look at the list of the long list of problems facing Turkey-US bilateral ties, some of them are structural and very difficult to resolve. I mean, take the example of the Gülen's extradition and the Halkbank case and Iran. So in cases like those, it's really, there's not much room to maneuver, no matter who is at the helm of State Department or Defense Department.
Before we conclude, Mrs. Tol, let's talk about the recent approval by the U.S. State Department of the sale of Patriot air missile and defense systems to Turkey. What are the odds, in your opinion, that Turkey would abandon its S-400 missile deal with Russia as a result of this approval?
Well, if you take the statements coming out of Ankara face value, I think Turks have said that they would move forward with the deal. But I think if they decide to withdraw from the S-400 deal, it will have serious implications. It will really piss Russians off, and I don't think this is a great time to anger the Russians, given the American withdrawal from Syria. So I think both President Erdogan and Çavuşoğlu, they were quite clear on the path forward. And let's remember that the State Department authorized the sale of Patriots, but we still have one hurdle, and a huge hurdle, and that is the Congress. So far, the reason why Turkey could not be able to purchase Patriots was the pressure coming from the resistance in the Congress. Has it changed? I'm not sure. And now that the Congress, we are facing an even more anxious Congress when it comes to foreign policy, the way President Trump has been handling foreign policy. So I think the Congress will have a more hands-on approach moving forward on foreign policy matters, and that's certainly not good news for Turkey, and that could have implications on the State Department's decision to sell Patriots. So I think it's important to watch the sentiment on the Hill vis-a-vis this. And also, again, if Turkey makes such a decision to withdraw from the deal, I think Turkey has a good understanding of how much Putin can hurt Turkish interests. We've seen that in 2015. So that's I'm sure still fresh in the minds of many people in Ankara. So that's going to be a very tough decision for Turkey.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tol, for your comments and for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
This week, we were joined by Gönül Tol from the Middle East Institute, who answered our questions on US President Donald Trump's decision to pull out of Syria, as well as the US State Department's recent approval of the sale of Patriot missile systems to Turkey. And now we'll continue with our next news video. US prosecutors accused Turkish businessman Ekim Alptekin of running a covert lobbying campaign in Washington aimed at pressuring the US government to hand over Turkish cleric Fethullah Gülen. Turkey accuses Gülen of masterminding the 2016 coup attempt.
The mayor of Istanbul's Beylikdüzü district, Ekrem İmamoğlu, was nominated to run for Istanbul province, while Mansur Yavaş, a former CHP mayoral candidate in the 2014 elections, will run for Ankara. The list of candidates, including the two names, was voted in a parliament assembly meeting on Tuesday and was revealed on the same day. Yavaş and İmamoğlu will be endorsed by the Good Party as part of an alliance between the two parties. Good Party had announced it would support the CHP's candidates in the country's two largest provinces in the local elections. CHP leader Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu previously praised İmamoğlu for being hard-working and conducting successful work for Beylikdüzü district. İmamoğlu had said in an interview that Istanbul needed a roadmap for its future development. He stressed the residents of Istanbul were not happy living in this mega city and the province should be made people-friendly. On the other hand, Yavaş's potential nomination was criticized by some CHP members as he has a background in right-wing nationalist politics. But the support he is set to receive from Good Party, also a nationalist party, is expected to higher his chances for the CHP candidates in his race for the capital city. Yavaş is an important figure in politics. I speak to him from time to time. He is a popular name within our circle too, Kılıçdaroğlu said in October. Yavaş, a former member of the Nationalist Movement Party (MHP), was nominated as the CHP's Ankara candidate in the 2014 local elections. He lost narrowly to ruling Justice and Development Party (AKP's) candidate Melih Gökçek after a controversial voting process. The CHP appealed to Ankara's district election boards over voting irregularities, but the board dismissed all applications. Meanwhile, the ruling Justice and Development Party (AKP) has still not announced its candidate for Istanbul, despite revealing Mehmet Özaseki for Ankara. Parliament Speaker Binali Yıldırım is expected to be the nominee of the ruling party.
We just watched a video update on the latest in the run-up to the 2019 local elections in Turkey, and now we'll continue with the video on Turkish businessman Ekim Alptekin, who is being accused of running a covert lobbying campaign in Washington right now.
Turkish national Kamil Ekim Alptekin and US national Bijan Rafikyan are accused of conspiring to covertly and unlawfully influence US politicians on behalf of Turkey. Both men are business associates of President Trump's ex-national security advisor, Michael Flynn, who last year admitted to lying about several aspects of the lobbying work. In recommending he serve no prison time, prosecutors said Flynn not only helped with the Russia probe, but also an undisclosed and separate criminal investigation. Documents filed alongside that recommendation span several paragraphs laying out the details of Flynn's Turkish lobbying. Bijan Rafikyan was arrested and made an initial appearance on Monday in federal courts in Alexandria, Virginia. He is indicted on charges including failing to register as a foreign agent. Alptekin, a dual Turkish-Dutch citizen living in Istanbul, remains at large. Alptekin is also charged with failing to register as a foreign agent and also making false statements. If convicted, Rafikyan faces a maximum penalty of 15 years and Alptekin faces a maximum penalty of 35 years for all the charges brought against them. The indictment accuses both individuals of illegally lobbying in the US to discredit Fethullah Gülen and have him extradited. According to the indictment, Alptekin worked at the direction of the Turkish government, but the defendants worked to conceal that fact. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has accused Gülen of directing the failed coup of 2016, an allegation Gülen denies.
Renowned Syrian singer and former wedding musician Omar Suleiman will be live in concert tonight in Istanbul's Zorlu Performance Arts Center.
Omar Suleiman will be joining his Istanbulite fans at Zorlu PSM studio tonight. Suleiman started off his career as a wedding entertainer in his native Syrian town, but his music reflects more than just Syrian traditional folk. Omar Suleiman's music is a harmony of the geographical memory of his homeland, and he describes it as follows. My music is from the community I come from. The Kurdish, the Ashuri, the Arabic, they're all in this community. Even Turkish, because it's so near, it's just across the border, and even Iraqi. Suleiman has made memorable appearances in world-famous stages like the 2011 Glastonbury Festival and has collaborated with world-renowned stars such as Björk.
That's all from This Week in Turkey. Thanks for tuning in and hope to see you again next Friday at 9 p.m. Goodbye.